The game of consciousness is one we all play. It begins in the beginning with awareness we might not experience until we're 4 or 5 months old, but most infants experience awareness pretty rapidly. From there, we gain the basics, and we learn how to play with others. The process of learning is severely compressed, but we're built for it. By the time we can stand, we've already learned a great deal. We learn what reactions mean and how to make choices to be good or perhaps not. Walking, talking, playing with others might sound trivial, but these are all sophisticated games children play. We tell children life is a game, but the trouble is rules and umpires are hard to find. After this point, we begin to recognize ourselves in the mirror, sometime around 5 years old. This is the single great leap that most mammals or creatures, for that matter, don't possess. We begin to develop our personality. We begin to work on impulse control and the skill of playing nicely with others. We work to do away with our selfish impulses, and while some can claim that win in childhood, I could not. At a point in a child's life, and it could be quite late in this life, the need to use physical contact in situations where anger arises becomes illogical from a cultural point of view, if for nothing else. Around about the same time self-awareness occurs, the true personality of the child will emerge, and a strong sense of self will develop. At points thereafter, which might be a few months or perhaps several decades, humans begin to realize they are not only themselves, but they also must play a role in the world to support themselves and facilitate the culture. The separation between self and a conscious actor of a role is a switch that some simply can't do, and some are tortured by it. The need to act within the confines of a role that you did not define, nor have much control over, exists. Student is the first role most of us are presented. How you deal with playing a role will determine the rest of your game. You begin to run into significant consequences with law enforcement or parents or your school, which ratchet up consequence for behaviors society deems unacceptable. The person begins to recognize that while they are themselves, other people also have mental models of themselves, and the two are not necessarily compatible. We begin to think about the other person and how they perceive our communications, so we may better craft messages, and this little ditty is called the theory of mind. It's also the point where many of us begin to suppress thoughts, and or suppress expressing those thoughts to others. You begin to recognize the barriers others have erected to protect themselves, and look for ways to engage them that won't trigger their defense mechanisms. Throughout our middle childhood, the process of etching morals and ethics from our culture onto us is taking place. Soon enough, we learn that despite the full attention given to us by our parents, hopefully, we are not special, and there are 8 billion other language-using mammals that we share this landscape with. Hopefully, toward the end of adolescence, after Santa has died and magical thinking has mostly disappeared, we become aware of our mortality and the mortality of the ones we love. We might recognize this through realizing or experiencing the death of another, or it might occur to us that we're going to die, and that idea is simply too big for the mind at that time. Inevitably, all humans must go through a period of mourning the knowledge that you are mortal. This is akin to Adam and Eve taking the fruit in the garden. It would have been better to not have known the fact, but it is out of our control. As one begins to recover from this new insight, they might choose to actively grow themselves and look for areas of weakness they can reconcile with what they believe is nominal. logic not only is recognized, but is utilized along with rationality throughout our late adolescence. We learn how to do 10 things at one time and begin taking on the wardrobe of an adult. We learn how to juggle life, and we also learn how to handle failure sometimes. This is the point where rest areas begin to emerge on the ConsciousnessLand game board. What are those things? As the inset text describes, rest areas are stations where if someone is not up to playing the game any longer, they can bypass the rest of the game's stops and simply stay at the level of development they rolled into the rest area with. It frequently happens that individuals will cease growing after leaving school as the responsibilities of life, career, children, etc. take up what they believe is all of their time. Regardless, the rest areas are not prisons, and the individual can choose to leave and rejoin the game at any time, but like the Nexus in Star Trek Generations, the rest areas are quite pleasant. And somewhere, one could make a very good life. There's absolutely no judgment about the usage of rest areas, but simply the acknowledgement that those states of personal development exist. As part of our career, we may need to develop collaboration skills and other diplomatic approaches to working with others. We begin to learn or train ourselves to be conscientious towards others, since the general human instinct leads towards selfishness over conscientiousness or empathy. As we engage with our larger community, we will be confronted with beliefs that are diametrically opposed to ones we hold. We will be asked to reconcile what we believe in order to proceed along the game. This means we will end up with the set of former beliefs that never really go away, but are relegated into a coat closet dedicated to old ideas that we don't believe in any longer. The rest area at this stop is rather full. In one's midlife crisis, or one of the many crises we have, we will need to rebuild, reorder, and reassess the nature of who we are. What does our ego present to the outside world? And what do we need it to do to build it to a state that develops and satisfies both our needs and the cultural requirements of the world? Inevitably, we will be knocked down in dramatic fashion. Getting back up after one of the big smackaroos that life gives us never really returns us to 100% of the position we had and facilitates the crash into the dark night of the soul. This is the breakdown where you question everything, and it's presenting us with a choice of whether we're going to continue on the path we've previously trod, or if we're going to make changes and allow us to perhaps live a better life. Anyone who has had a dark night of the soul experience will tell you it's memorable, and you actively seek to avoid it happening again. This is the point where you elect to just do it right and make the necessary sacrifices in order to ensure your behavior matches the expectations that you have of yourself. You make an inventory of the things you're not satisfied with and begin to plan for how you're going to make serious changes. Then you find a path or a mentor or a map or anything that will guide you in your inventory, as well as prioritizing what comes first. Then you do what hasn't been done for a long time. You fix your first problem. Encouraged by your success, you commit to fix another. After this little bout of self-discipline, I found that empathy emerged much more freely, and I was unafraid to express that empathy when it did. At some point, the nature of accepting reality as it is becomes your normal state. You look for the breadcrumbs the universe has left you to find your next challenge or adventure. Unlike your youth, this adventure is marked by wisdom exceeding foolish thoughts and actions. This is the point where the middle-aged adult begins to question, beliefs that are tied to categories. My nationality, my ethnicity, my religion, my race. Any of these cliques will allow you and ask you to believe things that have no proof and are marked by emotion and fear behaviors. The culture has beaten it into them. This requires a slight detour, but I promise you, you're gonna love it. There's a joke in corporate America about how regulations are made in corporate rules. Imagine a large enclosure that's about 20 meters in diameter and about 10 meters tall. Within the enclosure are 5 adult orangutans who play on an apparatus erected in their habitat. They're fed and taken care of in this space. One day, a researcher climbs to the top of the apparatus and hangs a bunch of bananas at the very top. The other monkeys begin to investigate, but before the first monkey could even lay a hand on a piece of fruit, the 4 other monkeys were soaked by the researchers outside the cage using a sizable water hose. This training was the only one of its kind required. The other 4 monkeys proceeded to beat the crap out of the one who went for the bananas. And when a monkey would start for the banana, the rest of the troop would remind them, and the bananas would rot at the top of the enclosure. Now, they exchange one of the orangutans for a new one who's ignorant of this version of banana waterboarding. When the bananas are swapped out, the new monkey begins to investigate and climb toward the bananas. And inexplicably, this new monkey is beaten senseless by his troopmates and learns to not go near the bananas, even though he doesn't understand why they don't want him to go toward the bananas. All 5 original monkeys are eventually exchanged one at a time, and the new orangutans are given a chance to learn the rules from their encounters with their troop. None of the current 5 orangutans were part of the original experiment, and they have never been showered with water. They have simply been trained. This is how corporate culture emerges, and great care must be taken to avoid oppressive and totalitarian bent from those who believe they have power over others. Once you begin to understand that the rules are not fixed in place and you can navigate around the understandings of others, you begin to experience a much more flexible attitude toward others. You choose to stop believing in divisive ideas, and you choose to believe in the possibility of a harmonious and pluralistic society. You accept fact as reality, and when something isn't quite right according to you, you opt for an attitude of responsibility and seek a way to find how you can help. You begin giving back and also begin asking, if you haven't already, the question, why am I here? And what am I supposed to do? Some make it past the point of understanding what their why is and how they will pursue it. Still fewer go past that point and choose to do the unthinkable and seek to destroy the need for a sense of self in the first place. You can eliminate the I in your dealings with others and simply be there as you are. No ego required. It's bloody challenging, I'll tell you. If you get past the destruction of your ego and have emptied your bladder at the last gas station before nirvana, you proceed to develop an equanimity with reality, and you eliminate the most fear or hate-driven thoughts from craving. If you're able to accomplish the eradication of hate and fear from your mind, it would stand to reason that you're also going to be able to do that for craving, although craving is far stickier. You can't escape the trap of desire that can never be satisfied. Those who are able to accomplish this have effectively reached the fully conscious, awakened human being. And I cannot imagine a better prize at the end of a game. This is Bodie Chris. Tell me what you think. This was something that came to me in approximately an hour, the map anyway. And I'm interested in what you think. Let me know in the comments. Like, subscribe, all that. Thanks.